We're live. Okay, I'm gonna pop out some chats. So I've got the YouTube chat right there. I'll move this back out of the way. Let's refresh that page. Let's open up some of those URLs.
Stream.
Oh wow, okay. Am I getting that much glare off of my glasses? I
Um,
am. I totally am. Okay, I gotta sit at a different angle.
you want a polarized filter.
No, I'm just gonna sit at more of an angle. Um,
Twitch.
oh wow, it really is pretty bad, isn't it? Uh, this is what happens when you shift locations. Let's see if I do this. That helps. Okay, I got this. Twitch.tv.
Okay.
And let's go hit our channel. Hey everybody, we are currently dealing with the fact that we are in a bit of a rush, but we wanted to make sure that we were here on the stream, chat about a couple different things, and some of the
Oop. Okay. I think I've done one. Right. Done one.
cool. All right, can I? Hit the creator dashboard. And then the,
Ooh, you can click on links now in Streamplace.
oh, lovely. Chat. Pop up chat. Yeah. All right, so that just leaves me to pull up the Streamplace chat. Oop, oop. Can I pop out this chat yet? I can pop it out, but I need to log in first.
Oh, you can pop out Streamplace chats?
I think so.
That's helpful.
Okay, I'm logged in now. Let's go back
Come on,
to.
log in.
Yes, there's now a pop out button. Oh wow, that's a big pop out. That's okay. Okay. All right. We've got all of the chats. We've got all of the feeds going. And it is
Oh, I can't log
9:45 on
in.
the West Coast.
Also 9:45, slightly further up the West Coast.
I was watching a YouTube video with my son, and it is a dude who lives in Oakland who has been transiting from Oakland to various different places on the West Coast just via um, non-Greyhound, non-Amtrak transit. So he took like city and county buses from Oakland all the way down to LA first, and he just started publishing a video series where he's doing it to Seattle, which has been fascinating to watch.
How does one do that?
It turns out that county transit agencies across the West Coast pay for people to be able to, they basically subsidize these routes to be able to get around their communities. And so some of them are actually like intra county routes. Um,
Okay.
so you can actually do it and get around, which I never thought would be possible, but actually, yeah, it makes sense, right? And the transit that he's publishing this over three YouTube videos and 3 days of him transiting to Seattle, transiting through Oregon sounds like it is more challenging, and some of them are actually private bus routes as opposed to
Huh.
municipal or government owned or government operated. So that's interesting.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I cannot log into Screenplace in the meantime.
Okay.
It's giving me stuff. It's not able to. It's not resolving a PDS.
That's interesting. Have you
Yeah.
moved your PDSs recently, or do we need to
No,
go
it's no, it's
message
timing
Eli?
out.
Okay. Oh, it's timing out. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Um, how can I wait? Let's see if I can do this. Can I do this? No. Yeah, I'm getting a 400 trying to
Multiple
resolve
presenters.
Amanita.
Oh, I just got the request for you to present. You want to present?
Yeah.
You are now allowed to.
Thank you.
I
Yeah.
can blow you up
Oh,
larger as needed.
wait, where did it go? Okay, we'll try this again.
I might shrink myself down a little
And
bit.
then it won't work. So what should we talk about this time?
Yes, normally Dan and I do a little bit more planning before jumping on, but we were thinking about trying something slightly different, which is that we wanted to meet and chat for a little while, and then next week Dan's going to be in out of town for a bit, so we were going to chat again on Tuesday.
Yeah.
Um, I think that it is worth talking about, and I'll noodle on something that I plan to write up, which is like what needs to happen in order for the AT-Proto ecosystem to succeed, and what sort of aspirations and things do people actually want out of this, and then also there's some of the random bits and bobs like Pocket end of lifing, sorry, Mozilla end of lifing Pocket, and conversations about like, hey, is this a piece of social technology or not? Is it something that's appropriate for AT-Proto or not?
Right. Um, ooh. Well, my brain has a very naive caching system where only the most recent thing is in my brain. So I'm like, oh no, let's talk about Pocket. That's interesting. Um,
But what else do you want to
but
talk about?
then there's the first thing. Um, I was going to suggest one thing that was on my mind is I'm still thinking about the uh, the hallway track that I was thinking about putting together on the ACLU. Like, what would an ACLU approved social network
Uh-huh.
look like, and what the architecture for that might look like? So I've got that noodling around in my head. But I think
So
the
let's talk about
combination,
that.
yeah,
I would be super up for talking about that, and also in to some degree in preparation for the next Indie Sky session,
yeah,
which will be more trust and safety focused and moderation
uh,
and sort of
yeah,
so forth. So,
yeah. Um, So we were doing so last week, or the week before, we did a little bit of thinking about that, and we went through. Actually, one of the things we were thinking about was who might pay for different parts of infrastructure.
hmm
Um, After having landed on what type of infrastructure an ACLU approved social network might look like, because we're looking at who might pay for different parts of it. And we were thinking again about, well, what parts would, or what attributes would the ACLU care about? Um, I guess from a doggedly free speech point of view,
hmm
and freedom of reach point of view. Um, I think that kind of, if you want, smushes together with the what's Mozilla doing with Pocket, which I saw someone describe as a extinction event nearly on the order of Google Reader for that particular person. Um, and what else? And your first thing of what else needs to exist for the App Proto social ecosystem to more than survive, but to thrive. Uh, and I think what I'm like, so my first reaction to that first topic of yours was irrespective of the need and the tendency to go towards architecture porn.
Uh-huh.
Um, what are the applications that what social applications would thrive that can be built on AT-Proto rather than what does AT-Proto need to do to support thriving social applications like killer social apps.
Yeah, I think a bunch of that stuff is interesting in part because you need to dive down into like why does Pocket exist and what sorts of things. I mean, there are plenty of alternatives for Pocket at this point,
Yeah.
as well as socially enabled ones uh, we should just say like this has definitely been a week for interesting shutdowns because one of the things I was going to point to is post Marks, which is Casey Kolderup's project to do ActivityPub bookmarking and sharing,
Yeah.
which is, Casey's still committing to this. And most recent commit was just this past week. And it's designed to be able to go up on Glitch, which is a bit awkward at the moment. And like I feel like the glitch team has always been fascinating, and hearing about the glitch shutdown was kind of a bummer.
Yeah. Oh, so many directions to go in on that.
Yeah.
Um, is
Uh,
bookmarking really a thing?
Bookmarking is a thing. The question is like, what was the original purpose for Mozilla buying Pocket? Why did Pocket want to get acquired by Mozilla?
Right.
And the fact that like, okay, so here I am using Google Chrome. Oh, you can't see it here, but like Google Chrome actually has a fairly extensive both bookmarking system
Right.
and recommender
And
system built in
right.
now. Um, and um,
And read it
and
later, right? And a reader mode and read it later, which is
right.
what I think Pocket also covered when it was trying to figure out what it was.
Yeah, and then the other part about this is like some of this is like multi-device sync. Some of it
Yeah.
is the fact that normal people out there just use whatever the default uh, browser is, and so some of this like, does any of this matter? People are just using Safari, or they are
Yeah.
using Chrome on Android, right?
Yeah.
And what is the most important device for them, and what are they trying to keep track of? It's been interesting seeing people being like, I've seen a bunch of conversations where people are like, I looked through my Pocket dump and like none of the stuff is relevant anymore. Actually, it turns out it didn't matter. I'm like, oh,
Right.
okay. And I will admit to being one of those people who also put things in Pocket to keep it so I didn't feel bad about closing the tab.
Huh. Okay. So I use Raindrop for my bookmarking. I don't really do read it later stuff. I think I'm weird in our cohort about tabs in that I just don't. The only reason I have hundreds of tabs open on my iPhone is because I use NetNewsWire, the RSS reader, and I have NetNewsWire to set to open up anything I tap on, anything I open up in a new tab,
Oh,
instead
cool.
of on the in browser, instead of in the in-app browser, because I want the history to sync across my devices, right?
So you were
So
turning your browsing sessions into a feed for yourself for later.
yes, and I switched from Delicious. No, I switched from Pinboard. I switched from Delicious to Pinboard. I switched from Pinboard to Raindrop maybe a year ago now.
Hmm.
I have I imported 69,000 bookmarks from Pinboard.
60.
Uh
Okay. All right.
69,000. I paid for full text search on them.
Sorry,
Um,
sorry. Let's back up. I should have said nice. Um,
Thank you. Since then I've added 2,200. So I've got a while till I hit the next number.
cool.
So 71,000 bookmarks. I just bookmark everything. I just hit the raindrop icon on pretty much everything that catches my attention for more than 3 seconds. And then I have it in a bookmark. I essentially have it in a fully searchable history.
Right.
So
So, as all programming languages should be compared to whether they are an adequate Lisp or not, my question for
right.
you is: have you built an adequate Memex?
I don't even bother tagging them anymore. I don't know anyone who bothers tagging things anymore. I just don't have
Right.
the time. I just rely on search. And whether this is like an idiosyncratic thing of being able to remember the 2 or 3 words that will be able to get me to the thing that I'm looking for, I just rely on because I don't really. Maybe it uses. Maybe it auto generates tags. Um,
But I mean,
but
this
I'm
is
not really
basically just
bothered.
content addressing, right? That's kind of what I mean, right? Like just like
Yes.
the
Yeah.
funny notion of the text being the thing that you should be indexing by
Yes.
is functionally how AT-Proto works as well.
Yep.
And I think the paradigm that the move from Yahoo as a index of the web to
Yep.
Google being the search index of the web, right?
Yeah. So what? Pocket needed to get acquired by Mozilla because it couldn't figure out how to make any money or enough money.
No, Pocket needed to be acquired by Mozilla in part because JavaScript snippets were going away, and because
Okay.
JavaScript was being locked down, you would need to get everybody to install a browser extension in order to
Uh-huh.
actually be able to clip things from the web.
Right.
And then the path to that was, okay, well, how do you get wide distribution through a browser? One is to be a
You
browser.
could be in
Um,
one.
yeah. And so that because I remember the posts about this back in I want to say 2013 2013 2014 ish, because you got to remember what the evolution of the web was. The web was originally a publishing medium for text, and then people were
Yep.
like styling, and then people were like, actually, you know what, I want other people to be able to run code on my computer.
Yep.
And That was Mozilla's original sin with JavaScript.
Yep.
I'm mostly joking here. JavaScript is awesome.
It's
But
the with I was going with ASM. It's there's people like Simon Willison will say that like a stupendously fully portable um, app environment.
yeah, I mean, we've gone through generations of this because we've got JavaScript and being able to run other people's code, which has enabled
Yep.
advertisements, for example, and pervasive tracking on the internet. Great. Um,
Yay.
but has also enabled all of Web 2.0 and all of the niceties and affordances that we kind of appreciate.
Yep.
ASM is great, as you mentioned, and we've I lost the plot. Uh, what we're oh right, so the issue was that
Recapitulating the
being able to
history of the
run.
browser. Yep.
Well, the question is fundamentally who controls the browser and how much control do they have over it. And
Yep.
so it used to be totally open, and being able to say we can the user can do anything with JavaScript. So like, here, user, run this thing, and then you could do cool things. So that used to be little just snippets of JavaScript that you could add as a little bookmark, and if they were short enough snippets, you could just run them directly in the browser, which is the way that Instapaper and Pocket and a bunch of these
Yep.
read it later things worked. That was terribly insecure, and you could make it steal anything that was on the page, including page secrets.
Yep.
So that's why browsers stopped doing that. But the flip side of that was, Pocket no longer worked, and moving to this model where you had to write a web extension, which
Hmm.
were also JavaScript, but a different environment, and you had to go through the stores that the browsers had set up.
Right.
Meant that things were slowly, incrementally locking down. Which again, good thing overall. You do not want your parents or your non-technical siblings stuff to get stolen just because somebody sent them something to run and they trusted them, right?
Yeah.
So the acquisition for Pocket happened in 2017. Sounds like
Hmm.
I was not at Mozilla at the time, and made sense because actually Mozilla competing with Google on that front, and Pocket was still sort of in that personal productivity tool for a small but very vocal segment of the public. And then everybody else could maybe use a some bookmarking tool that helped them make sense of the content they were
Yeah.
digging through, right? So,
Yeah. Acquired in 2017.
yeah. So Mozilla was then, Pocket's been at Mozilla for, I guess, 8 years now, right?
Hmm.
Um, And I should also disclose, I worked with a bunch of the Pocket team, and enjoyed working with a number of them over that span of time.
Hmm.
They employed a bunch of people who were journalists to do some of that human curation and publishing of a newsletter, of
Right.
the content that got put on the new tab page in Mozilla,
Oh
all
yeah.
of which
Yeah.
was good stuff. I should also add that the Pocket team maintained the editorial standards for the ads that were published inside of Firefox too, right? So this is human curation of advertising, which is, I think, what people kind of wanted, as opposed to that race to the bottom with programmatic ads. And so, the question is, when Mozilla says Pocket is ending, which parts of that are ending, and how much? Because I know from having kept up with some of these friends that some of these features have just moved into the mainline of Mozilla, and are still going to be around. But the issue fundamentally are the Pocket app and the APIs that were powering all of these power user use cases. I think are primarily what people are talking about winding up.
So I have a thought here, um, which
Besides Kevin
is
Rose offering to buy Pocket here.
yeah. Um, okay, so the first one is a very brief aside into everyone, well, not everyone, people with all the money and all the eyeballs and all the users increasingly racing to put together an everything app, or
Mm-hmm.
thinking that they're going to have an everything app, whether that's because they are billionaires who own a social network or because they are people who've just put out a wedding announcement between one of the world's famous designers and the apparent heir to the Steve Jobs throne. Which is the did you see that the
No.
announcement that this is the OpenAI John Sam and Johnny wedding announcement, which looks like
Oh yes, right.
right. It's either a wedding announcement or look at our new baby, and complete with all the photography and videography and everything.
Yes, I
Um,
did see that. Okay, you're right. Um,
so so you've got your everything app. You've got everything that you say about what a browser does. And in my head, that also connects to, well, when does a feature, well, when is an app ending up just to be a feature? Which is which is one way of
yeah,
describing the read it later stuff, right? It's like, okay, well, this was a separate bit of functionality. Turns out that's just a feature of a browser because the two are just so close to each other, or that the feature can be subsumed, the app can be subsumed into as a feature in the browser, and then that's close enough and that's good enough as a default for most people.
right.
Um, and so then I'm thinking about, okay, so Pocket are kind of, in that Venn diagram middle space between bookmarking and also read it later and also editorial recommendations, right?
Yep.
So you've got your browser on the one hand, which is where you may find things to bookmark and may find things that you want to read later or take a note of into your personal content store, into your Memex. You've got your, for now, completely separate social network app, right? Which is not your browser, which is not what you use your browser for, I would say,
Yeah.
for most people. It doesn't look like, this is where I eat my words, it doesn't look like there's that social network becomes the thing inside the browser, or the browser becomes the thing inside the social network. Apart from, as I'm talking about it, apart from Facebook, which famously keeps everything, makes it really, really hard for you to escape Facebook's mobile in-app browser, right? And I think they got in
Yeah.
trouble for it a little bit because everything that they can see you do inside that browser,
Yeah. That's actually maybe
inside
something
that
that
web view.
we should mention too, which is like, if you are browsing inside of somebody else's app, they can stick JavaScript, coming back to this, into that browsing session. And so Facebook can literally track, if you are in the Facebook app and you're
Yeah,
tapping around on stuff, they can literally see everything on the page, all of the things that you type into it, including your passwords, and how you interact with the page, right? Which is the
yeah,
reason why they want to keep you on your in-app browser, and the reason why Blue Sky, for example, by default, um,
does not.
opening another browser is like a huge trust signal, right? Like, it's
Yes,
actually cool that they do that. Yeah.
yeah. Um, so, and then on the other hand, you've got bookmarking inside of Blue Sky, right? Or you don't have bookmarking, you have favoriting. And it's not particularly mature in terms of treating that as things that you want to like. You can't search through your favorites at the moment. I think not easily, or it's not exposed, right? You can't. There's not an operator to just go through your to just search through your personal
Through your
favorites.
likes.
Yeah, through your likes. Can
Yeah, no,
you?
that's right. I think that you can open them back up as a feed. Let's find out. Let's see
Yeah,
all
you
of the things
can.
I favorited.
Yeah, you can definitely get them as a feed.
Likes. Yeah,
Because that's my other way of
right,
finding stuff. That's essentially my. I don't use them as likes. Still, I use them as stars.
right. Which has
So why not?
gotten parts of the Blue Sky team in trouble, like Aaron, the head of trust and safety,
Right.
since they're public.
Uh, yes. So Pocket is a thing for bookmarking slash read it later, but it's browser. It's from browser first, ostensibly. Apart from when you get into mobile, and then you can use a share sheet or you can use a share extension, and then they can
Yeah.
get stuff from wherever, provided there's a URL for it, right? So Pinteresty, which is another thing, which is another separate thing. Um, so is how much of Pocket is also a feature of a social network like inside the Blue Sky app made by Blue Sky, the PBC. How much can bookmarking or read it later survive as a sustainable third-party entity that, at the very least makes enough money to stay afloat
Yeah.
in a way that isn't, something hosted on Glitch, for example, or hosted for free or run for free on Glitch. Uh, because ultimately, when you were talking about, so this is content addressing, right? And having all of your stuff in the PDS, in theory, solves some of the syncing issues because like a whole bunch of different applications, in theory, you could give access to your content store that you hold in your PDS.
Yes. And there's like a bunch of things to think about there, which is one of which is, and I think actually this comes back to the primary thing, which is like a lot of people have been saying like pocket replacement on AT-Proto when, and part of the issue
Okay.
fundamentally um, is this information public or private,
Right.
and what is the purpose of social sharing of content, and in what contexts do you want to do it? And I think that what's interesting about that is both, starting with the predicate that Blue Sky is all public and everything that you put into a PDS is public,
Mhm.
is one starting point. The other starting point is things like Google Reader, right? And the fact that people are like, oh, Google Reader points the direction to a really interesting social reading kind of experience. And we should maybe talk about Google Reader in a little bit more depth if we actually want to make reference to it, since it's been over 10 years, right?
Yep.
And and like Google Reader, right, was an RSS feed reader, but also provided some social features in terms of being able to share things that you've been reading.
Yes.
And this is one of those things where like there are people who I'm like, I would love to know more about what you're reading, and they're like, whoa, that's really creepy. I don't want people to know what I'm reading. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's totally legit, right? And so the types of being able to share here, I think, is important. And the reason why I pulled SIL up here is it's one example of a type of social sharing experience that is emergent from some of these things. SIL is a take on what Nuzzle was doing,
Yep.
which
Oh
Nuzzle
yeah.
was
Yeah.
a tool which would spider through your feeds to see who had liked posts that pop up, and
Yep.
then could display things that had been liked by people. So you get a kind of meta or gestalt of
Yep.
who, what links were important to which groups of people,
Right. You can trace a
and
line all the way back through to blog decks.
yeah, right,
Yeah.
and that is a useful and interesting utility, right? So this is a type of social analysis of the way that we're interacting with content, what's important, right?
So, so, um, one point you said that you might be interested in seeing what other people are reading.
Yeah.
I think that's a trap because Google Reader is called Google Reader,
Yeah.
and I think it's also a trap because isn't the joke about all the read it later services that you never actually end up reading it later?
Right.
And what it's more a signal of is it's a signal of, oh, this is interesting to me, interesting enough for me to tap something and to know that I can come back to it later, whether I actually read it or not. In which case, in a weird way, you can look at the right. So that's what a discover feed is. You know, Sill is a
Yeah.
bit. Sill is like the smaller discover feed, and then you've got your discover feed in total, and then we get into algorithmic moderation, and then we get into trust and safety, and yada yada yada. One thing that I was thinking about, my stupid first thought was because we've been talking about human powered internet, right?
Hmm.
Is that the stuff in Pocket and my likes are human powered things,
Yep.
right? Because they indicate interest, they're a signal from a human.
Hmm.
And then you can do a whole bunch of interesting stuff with that. Because you could see them as well, they're additional data or they're additional signals from humans about interestingness. Apart from the fact that bots can generate them, and then you have the whole thing with bots and whether you can actually trust whether something was favorited or liked by a human or not. So kind of okay, great, but then not great. And then combining that with composable moderation, at least the way that Blue Sky supports composable moderation, which is all composable feeds, right? Or feed generators.
Yeah.
Um,
Same one.
because I can we can now write a Blue Sky feed. In fact, I have things like Blue Sky feeds that I subscribe to right now. Let me look at the ones that I subscribe to. Where are they? Yeah. I've got a feed of, and actually these are just posts, but I don't think they have to be posts. They could just be likes. They could be likes. I'm thinking out loud. Right. Yeah. I've got the popular with friends feed straight in Blue Sky, and I can't remember if that's a default one or if that's
It's
one.
not a default one. The only two default feeds are, here, let's go to my feeds. The only two default ones are Discover and Following. And then
Right.
there is quite a lot of other feeds that you can get to. You can search for them, and of course pin them. So
Yeah. Sage feeds. Okay. Right. And they don't have to come from. They can come from different people, right? Because they're
yep,
generated feeds.
the Popular with
Uh,
Friends is created
it
by
is an
Blue Sky,
official.
right? Yeah,
Yeah. Right.
but it's not a default
Uh,
feed.
so A, questioning whether bookmarking is a thing. B, personal anecdote. I have accidentally put stuff in my. I know that there was at least one other person who was following my Pinboard RSS feed.
Okay.
Um, so, um, and I would say, I was going to say that my instinct for the number of people following someone's feed of bookmarks would be very, very small. But that's only if you describe it as the number of people who would be interested in actively following someone's bookmarks versus, oh, I wonder what they have liked lately. Or, for example, if you completely obscure that and then you're looking at Facebook's feed, which is whether you like it or not, we are going to show you the things that your friends have liked just because you are friends with them.
Yeah.
Right. So it's kind of smushing. So Facebook just kind of smushed those together. Um, and the reason why I know that at least one person was following my Pinboard feed was because they sent me an email saying, do you know, just so you know, do you know that you have been saving these publicly, these recent ones publicly and not privately? In which, you know, just in case you want people to know or you're okay with people knowing that you are looking up the traits of narcissism. And, you know, which is a fair point because you probably don't want someone you suspect of being a narcissist finding that out about you.
Or if you're looking up narcissism, the people who you are wondering about, if they see
Right,
that, they will
exactly.
definitely
Yes.
think it's about them,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, right. So and there is a whole conversation to be had about, you know, public feeds versus private feeds, what people think is public,
Uh-huh.
what people think is private. versus what they think or what versus what they explicitly understand and treat as public. Because I will go off on my Venmo rant again
Uh-huh.
about Venmo's default to public, which I would say is just like Blue Sky's default to public. I think most people don't know
Right.
exactly how public Blue Sky stuff is, just like you're saying. Um, and then another weak tie to that is the release of all that Discord scraped data, right? That happened earlier this week. Uh,
Which one was that?
some researchers in South America released like a stupendously large corpus of
Oh,
scraped Discord conversations.
no, that's exciting.
Um, and it was totally waved through by the IRB. 2 billion scraped Discord messages were released 2 days ago. Um,
I
a comprehensive data set of public communication from 2015 to 2024. 4.7 million users across 3,167 servers, but that's okay because Discord's terms of service.
One second.
Yeah,
Um, I might have to ring off early.
yeah.
Um,
Well, we know what we're going to talk about on Tuesday.
uh, sorry to interrupt. Keep going.
So
I've got this
publicness.
Gizmodo post up.
Yeah, right. So publicness. Totally past the IRB. You know, they say it's a very valuable data set. And they part of the reason why they justify it is that Discord's T's and C's explicitly tell people that their messages are public. Um, but clearly, the public reaction has been, but you weren't supposed to do that.
Yeah.
And I can't remember, there was someone that I was talking to on Blue Sky who replied and said, well, privacy isn't really a thing anymore. And my quippy remark was that, privacy is a function of how much effort you are prepared to put
Yes.
in, right? Which is, yes, I get it. Like things are public in that they are accessible, but there is a difference between ease of access and your perceived ease of access versus, how much effort will someone need to put into it. And it turns out that like if you have a team of researchers who think it's their job to get access and put together a corpus like that, then they totally have enough. They're totally able to put enough effort in. But all of that is aside, that's part of this giant Venn diagram or graph of, okay, well, you've got publicness versus privateness over here. You've got the ostensibly defaulting to public um, ethos of Blue Sky's architecture.
Yeah.
And you've got what the hell does bookmarking or liking or read it later mean? And you have the what do we want recommendations for anyway? And the does a human powered internet, is one of the attributes of a human powered internet, knowing what your Mark Zuckerberg approved 14 other friends, 15 other friends are interested in lately,
Yeah.
whether they like it or not, right?
Yes. And what was interesting, this is a conversation that came up tangentially in the Indie Sky meeting that we had yesterday, which the Indie Sky is a working group that meets every 2 weeks. Yesterday was the second meeting. The third meeting will be in 2 weeks on Thursdays, 9 a.m. Pacific, which would be what, noon Eastern time, and sometime in the afternoon for our European friends.
Mhm.
And One of the things that came up, we were touching lightly on trust and safety and moderation and government takedowns, and the fact that in the case of Turkish government
Yep.
takedown requests, they took down, they flagged and labeled things at the app view layer
Yes.
versus taking it down at the PDS layer. And some of that
Right.
also was a discussion of there's a reason, there's sort of a reason why PDSs themselves don't have a browser component to it. You can't go to a PDS and start poking around inside of records directly. You
Yep.
could see a world in which like PDSLS was directly bundled, but part of it is it's a database. It is a store of records as opposed to a place that actually hosts records, and as a result, the locus and the sort of like notion of where the content is or how it's accessed is through an app view. And so this is the same sort of like level of effort kind of thing that I would also like make the case. All right, this isn't a purely online thing or like Discord thing. Like, how many Ring cameras are there out in the world, right? Like, actually, this is a problem, generally speaking, for the
Yeah.
negotiating what is public and what is private, and
Yeah.
where those things don't align to over time.
Yes. Yeah. And also, I was reading just based on that public thing, public private. I think Victoria Song tried out a AI pin maybe a couple months
Uh-huh.
ago. This is a Verge review, and it's a thing that is always listening,
Yeah.
and then generates, summaries or things that Tinder style, like, is this true about you based on what it's heard? And it turns out, unsurprisingly, that it is hilariously wrong a lot of the time. Between hilariously wrong because it can't tell the difference between you watching a TV show and you having a conversation with real people,
Yeah.
um, through to, um, you know, do you just turn it off when you're hanging out with friends? Um, right?
I mean,
Which
right. Sorry.
or it always is off, or what I suspect our fear is the default, that it is always on and that someone is going to always have one on. And especially the deal with the Ring cameras, right? It's all out there, and uh, I think the analogy that you're drawing with the case in Turkey is, I think Amazon frequently, people storing data controllers in the UK,
Yeah.
um, don't even bother with needing a warrant. You can, right, famously, isn't it, like, I can just send a fax that looks like it came from a police department, and then the information will be handed over.
Yeah, and coming back to trust and safety problems, right? The DSA actually mandates that tech companies provide a mechanism for law enforcement agencies to fast track requests into your company. Problem
Right.
is, nobody keeps an index of what are actual legitimate law enforcement agencies. And so tech companies often go like, looks legit to me, and sends it. So there are actually a series of social engineering attacks where people pretend to be law
Oh yeah.
enforcement agencies and request stuff and get it back, right? Which is not great.
Yeah, someone should fund government to have an official register of law enforcement agencies.
Well, this is the fun part about talking with tech people about government stuff, where and I've done this too. Um, I have talked to people who've gone into government and been like, "So where's the index of, or where's the directory of all the government agencies in the U.S.?" And then they go, and then you go,
But
"What?"
yeah, it turns out, that's the falsehoods programmers believe about lists of things in government,
Yeah,
probably. Right, which is to, one example would be, you would naively think that you could just leave the list to everything with a .gov domain in the US, and that is demonstrably not false based on the number of, at the very least, county level government institutions that are still on non.gov domains,
yeah,
and that there's still a push to actually move all of them over to .gov domains. Um, which is so all of this is to say, and again, as another aside, isn't it just a matter of time before um, a sufficiently informed state that's done its due diligence learns from Turkey and says, right, we want to get rid of this at the content store level and not at the app view. Like,
yeah,
we don't
and
want you to prevent access to it. We want it to not we want it to be deleted.
yeah, yep. And I think that that's going to be part of the conversation that we have in Indie Sky in 2 weeks. And
But this is
uh,
a
we should talk about this more on Tuesday.
yeah,
And we should post a time for doing that, and the sort of notion of publicness and privateness.
yeah,
Um, and yeah, I guess let's
do
maybe
that.
wrap it here.
Yeah.
This is our Friday hand to hand combat. Um, Always lovely chatting. Lots of things going on, and I guess we didn't really dive into the what things need to happen for AT Proto and the ecosystem to keep growing. But this was a
I
nice
think we're getting
jam on.
closer. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
Well, cool, man. Thanks. And thanks for everybody who's joined us. I have totally not looked at any of the numbers, so we could have just been talking to ourselves, but that's been fun too. And we'll see in